worship you today.
Hello, this is Sterling Lands. I serve as the senior pastor of the Greater Calvary Bible Church International. I'm inviting you to come out and become a part of a great family. You will love it here, and we'll love having you here too. We're at 6510 Berkman Drive, 6510 Berkman Drive, Greater Calvary Bible Church. Concerned about regarding school consolidation, which is a task in and of itself and quite a challenge, and we want to be able to help make that happen. So I don't plan to talk. I'm going to pass the mic right now to the superintendent, who has just walked in, and my introduction of him is that he is the superintendent. If you read on the top of your agenda, you will see something about who he is and what he does. One factoid, though, is that I discovered he was a professional engineer. That may not mean very much to many people, but it means something to me.
All right. Well, first off, they're working on it? Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. You know, it's really important that we have these conversations. We engage with community, and certainly want to thank Reverend Lands, Cheryl Bradley, and other community leaders for inviting Austin ISD in to have a conversation around the plan, and just listen and have a conversation so that we can learn, we can improve, and we can refine. So we do have a couple slides that I'd like to share, but I'm just going to hop right into it because it sounds like there are some things that may be occurring technically that are challenging at the moment. The first thing I want to say is, you know, we in Austin ISD right now are wanting to move the organization so that we have strong neighborhood schools. So what does that mean? When we say strong neighborhood schools, what we're talking about is ensuring that every student, no matter where they are in Austin, gets what they need, and it will be different. Different students in different parts of Austin need different things, but get what they need to be successful. I will tell you right now, and probably many of you know this, that that is not the case in Austin ISD right now. We have lots of great, incredible schools doing great things, but all of our students are not getting what they need to be academically successful, but doing it in a way that aligns with our values. We talk about values all the time. We want students who feel comfortable in their own skin. We want students who are comfortable having a conversation with someone that doesn't look like them. We want students who are great humans, and not just are great at taking tests, but love learning. That's what we want in Austin ISD. Now, there are lots of challenges that we have right now. I will tell you that public education is under attack. I have no problem saying that because after what I've experienced over the last 3 years, I promise you that it feels true. I will tell you right now that we're facing huge budget deficits. Right, because the cost of education has only increased year over year. And we're investing in our teachers, we're investing in our schools, but we're at a point where if we don't make a change, then we're not going to be able to continue to thrive. So at the same time, you know, the federal government has changed, and there are things that were flowing at one point that have all of a sudden seized up and stopped. And as we move forward and try to position this district for success, we had to create a plan that addressed multiple things at the same time. Right? The first is that it had to align feeder patterns. So in Austin ISD right now, there are schools that go 100% from the middle school into the high school. Where do you think those schools are? West Austin. They don't exist in East Austin. In East Austin, we have schools that go to 3, 4, and 5 high schools. How do you keep community together? How do you align feeder patterns? How do you align programming? How do you get UIL like competition and strengthen those vertical teams without that type of change? So as we're developing this plan, we wanted to address it and consider it. So that was one element. The second thing we wanted to do is to make sure that we acknowledge that the pressure on our budget is real. And if we don't do something, then we will not be at a point to provide those resources to all of our students. We're running a budget deficit. We have for some time. We have reduced our budgets by over $100 million. But every time we feel like we take away from our budget, something else comes. An example of that was earlier this year. We thought Title II, Title III, and Title IV dollars were going to be available to us. And then with a moment's notice, the federal government put a pause. And I had 100 people in a room and telling them that their future at Austin ISD was not likely going to continue in the way that it had been. Like, these are things that we're navigating every day. So we had to address this reality that simply right now, we do not have the resources to ensure every student gets what they need. 3, we have to address our transfer policies. Y'all, there are policies in place that have been in place for decades that are moving students out of certain neighborhoods, many of them in East Austin, to different parts of the town. First question we have to ask ourselves is, why are families feeling as though they have to go across town to have access to a strong neighborhood school? We have to own that. Austin ISD has to own that. But if we do not address those transfer policies at the same time that we don't strengthen our schools, we will never break that cycle. So in this plan, we are making changes and revisions to our transfer policies. 4, we have to recognize that many of our programs, most notably wall-to-wall dual language programs, are not currently supporting the originally intended kind of focus group, in this case, emergent bilingual students. We have 4 of them right now, right? And you look at the student populations within them, we have 14%, 21%, 22%, and 44% emergent bilingual. Like, we need to acknowledge that our emergent bilingual students are not accessing these programs. And as the city changes, if we don't move these schools, these programs closer to them and not provide access, then they're not going to be sustainable. Because here's the reality. In the very near future, we will be required as an organization to ensure that every one of our classrooms has a certified teacher. Right now, 12% of our teachers are not certified. They're on alternative certifications. But the state of Texas passed a law. It's kind of being brought into the processes now. But we're going to get to a point where if we don't have the emergent bilingual student populations, we're not going to be able to offer those dual language certified teachers. That's the honest truth. So we want to position ourselves for long-term stability. This plan attempts to address that. And I would say lastly, we have to acknowledge that we have immense pressure from the ever-changing accountability system. It has changed. In 2022, we had 16 schools that were a B, and then the following year in 2023, there were Fs. Same students, same teachers. The system changed, but here's the reality is that there's immense authority and power at the state level, and if we don't evolve, then we will put local control at risk. And y'all, it is real. It is happening right now to one of our sister school districts, and I will tell you that the last thing that I would ever want to have happen is have those elected officials who you elected not be the ones providing direction to our school district. So it had to be multi-layered. It had to be complex. That was the only way to address all these things simultaneously. And so as we talk about where we are moving forward, we want to have a dialogue, but I also want you to know that we have been moving the work. I think back about 2023 when we came together as an organization. I remember being here in this very church having a conversation about what are we going to do, and I was an interim superintendent. These individuals, Katrina Montgomery, our CFO, Lakeisha Drinks, our CFO and Chief of Staff. I was going to call you Chief of Financial Office. That was a whole different thing. We were not together, but we worked really, really hard, and year by year, we've been seeing movement. So think about what happened in 2023, right? We're coming out of the pandemic. You had 3 superintendents in about 2.5 years. You had vacancy rates throughout the entire system. We hired 24 principals that year. That year was only in here for like 3.5 months. When you have those types of attrition rates, you do not have stability. I see Tim Estes here from Keeling, an incredible leader. Like, he came back. I mean, not to shout out Keeling, but Principal Estes is amazing, y'all. And so I just want you to know that. So in 2023, we were faced with a TA grade order for special education. We had to acknowledge that we had not been serving our students our most vulnerable student groups. We came here, we talked about how are we going to change ourselves to ensure that our Black and brown students get what they need to be successful, how we support our students who receive special education services. We developed plans. We worked with the agency. We executed that plan. We moved and created and built multi-tiered systems of support. Before that, we did not have an understanding of how many students were on grade level and how many were not, school by school. Can you imagine that? I could not tell you how many third grade students were not on grade level 2 years ago. If I can't tell you which students are where in their academic journey, then how can we possibly understand what they need to get back to grade level? Can't. And so we have that. We spent the last year and a half working really, really hard, led by some of the individuals behind me to move the system, and now it's in place. And then what did you understand? When you understand where your students are, now you understand what you have to do. Well, we need to invest in instructional coaches. The tax rate election in 2024 helped us do that. Instructional coaches, where we didn't have them uniformly across all Title I schools, we made those changes. And so month by month, semester by semester, we have been making hard decisions, and our board has been right there supporting the work. And so now we find ourselves in 2025 tackling all of this. But I want you to know that we have seen improvements. In 2023, you had 30 F schools. In 2024, you had 29. In 2025, you have 23. You had incredible movement. You had Northeast Early College High School, an incredible high school, go from an F in 23, a D in 24, and a C in 25. At LBJ's at a C right now. Stability, like investing, understanding the lived experiences of our communities and making decisions, working with community and being relentless. This system is moving. Early literacy outcomes, early numeracy outcomes. We have been meeting every target, getting very, very close. The one we're not quite there yet is on African American and Black students. And I will tell you that we're moving the system, but we also created aggressive targets, really aggressive targets, because the color of your skin should not determine whether you are successful academically. It's our job, Austin ISD, to make sure they get what they need, every student. And so there's a lot in this plan. And I want to have a conversation with community to share with you where we are and what to expect. But I want you to know that this is urgent. If we do not make decisions, then it is very possible that decisions will be made to us or decisions will be made for us. Okay? And I am not going to be the superintendent who makes a change in the spring semester. Do you remember a couple years ago in 2023 when 6th grade was taken out of Martin and Mendez? And all the elementary schools, all of a sudden within a couple months, had to pivot and change, bring staff in, we had to move, we had to do all these things. And those schools struggled because of that change. We moved International High School from Eastside in a matter of months. They had planned with Eastside Early College High School to build that campus. And then in April, they were told, you have to go to Northeast Early College High School. Like, I cannot take away the one thing that I have to give families, and that's time to plan. And I also have to acknowledge what it takes to actually support our community. And so I will not make a decision or make a change in the spring semester. I'm going to be honest with our community about what has to happen and when, and support all of us. But I want you to know this is I often hear that it's rushed. And what I would say is that it's urgent. Things have changed around us. We're working very, very hard. But at the end of the day, we are an inch deep and a mile wide. We do not have the resources available to us to ensure that every student gets what they need. So we have to become more efficient, we have to become more intentional, and we absolutely have to move forward and do it together, or else we kind of risk losing, the ability to lead our own school district. And so I don't want to take a whole lot of time and kind of share with you what's in the plan. I know many of y'all have spent time with the plan. There are some questions that we receive from Reverend Lands and from community members. I'm happy to prompt the conversation with that and then have any community member come up and answer and ask any questions. Would that sound okay? Sound good? Okay. So question number one, what criteria has been used to decide which schools are consolidated or closed. So when we started this process in February and March, I wanted to be very, very clear that we had to use data. It had to start with reliable data, because if I didn't do that, then we'd get to this point and the question would be, Matias, can we even rely on that data? And so we had conversations with our community. We talked about which elements should be incorporated into the rubric. We identified the data. We cleaned it to make sure there weren't errors. We had conversations around what does a utilization number need to be? Are we considering the fact that this school has a higher student population of students receiving special education services? If that's the case, then you made an adjustment downward. Are there programs in the school that the students absolutely need? Let's make that adjustment. And so it was a data-driven effort in the beginning. And then once we got to that index, many of you all remember that index, that merely communicated where we had misalignments in our school district. Were we over-enrolled? Were we under-enrolled? McCallum was like number 7 on the list. And people would always say, Matias is the closure list. I was like, I'm not going to say this now, but I don't believe that McCallum closing is likely going to be one of the solutions. And so we used that, and then we dove deep region by region and said, we have to figure out, in this part of town, we have 2,000 excess seats. But the one thing we don't want to do is to overburden any one part of the community. And so when you look at the number of closures, I hope that you would see is that they're distributed in a way that in some cases might be surprising. Because in years past, you would see them all in East Austin. That's not the case. Now they're distributed. And the reason we're able to do that is because we're moving programs to areas of the city that otherwise would have too many seats, right? So we're trying to find solutions that address multiple things at the same time. So it wasn't an algorithm. It wasn't just a simple prioritization. It was truly data first. Then you dive deep. You understand what is competing with each other in an area, make an informed decision, adjust, refine, and then we move forward. And so that's how we came about with this plan. As we move to the next slide, I don't have the. We talk about accountability. I'm going to go back real quick to accountability because I've been asked about that. Matias, did accountability play a role in the school consolidation process? And the honest truth is that the goal was to take it all the way to as far as we could and then recognize that we had to overlay our response to the turnaround plans. And wherever there was alignment, we made adjustments and we moved forward. In some cases, we have turnaround plans that are restarts. In some cases, we have reassignments. In some cases, we're looking at other solutions. But it was never something that we started with. It was never our intention because I know for a fact that our students are more than a score. There are communities that have the weight of the accountability system, and there are great schools, loving schools with great educators doing great things. And so that was never going to be a foundation for our work. But I will be honest with you and say that once the two came together, we had to make adjustments to ensure that whatever we did would be supported by the agency as we move forward, because we have to submit on November 21st. So what are the projected savings from consolidations and what are the projected transition costs? There's been a couple things that I want to respond to. The first is these savings are fairly conservative. We do not, want to go down to personnel level reductions in staff. So we use this acknowledgement that if you combine schools, you're going to allocate more staff, but you're going to find administrative efficiencies. You need one principal where previously you needed 2 for the same student population. We also know that at the end of the day, there are going to be other operational cost savings. And so what we did is looked at campus by campus, look at staffing allocations, and we estimate about $24 million in savings. And I've heard someone say before, Matias, well, that's a fraction of your total budget. And I know that in many cases, our total budget is actually $1.7 billion, but $780 million of that goes away. That's not part of our operating budget. So it really becomes $20 million or $24 million over a much smaller number. The other thing that we talk about are offsets, because we're making investments in the turnaround campuses, just the way we've done already and what we're going to continue to do moving forward. The reality of all is, even if we didn't consolidate, we would still have to pay those dollars, right? Because the Texas Education Agencies wants to understand, Matias, what resources are you going to deploy? Are you going to have 2 instructional coaches where previously you had 1? Are you going to have a lower counselor to student ratio, counselor to student ratio? We're at 1 to 450. We're committing to go to 1 to 300 at these campuses. Are you going to add other resources? And our answer is yes, and we would add them either way. So it's a cost. So $24 million is about the savings. We are making, and we are committed to improving and refining those numbers as we go forward. The other question I get is, Matias, what if you lose students in this process? Right, that's the honest truth. Like, could you lose students by way of a consolidation? The answer is yes, you can. Now, I've done research. I've seen what Richardson's done, San Antonio's done, many other school districts, what we even did in 2019. And what I would say is it varies. It really depends on the thoughtfulness of the transition plan and our ability to support our students and our staff through that change. The other thing I would say is, if you have strong schools, right, and you're leaning into our community, my argument is that you would draw students back in parts of Austin that you otherwise lost. That's the goal. Like, why is it that in the Rumberg area, there are charters that have taken our students away from our schools? And I can't fault families for doing what's best for their kids. I would want every one of us to do that. But at the end of the day, until the schools are providing their students everything they need, it's going to be hard to get them back. And so this plan will ultimately help free up resources. And I also want to be really clear, it is multiple steps. There are things that we're going to have to continue to do to get to where we need to be. So as far as the reinvestment, right now we're estimating about $800,000 per campus. That's staffing. We do allocate some funds for community engagement, for other elements. They're all kind of outlined in the turnaround plans. The other thing I would say is we have other supports that we provide administratively, and it's just kind of all part of what we're going to be providing, and some of that is also in our backup already. How has the district engaged family, staff, and community members in decision-making implementation? So we started this process back in February and March. We engaged early on about the rubric. We tried desperately to communicate this was coming. I also recognize that until a plan is brought forward, it's hard to engage, right? Because it just feels distant. During the summertime, we talked about working through the plan and coming out with something for our families and community to react to and respond to, which is where we are now. We've had lots of meetings. We've had meetings around the turnaround plans. We've had meetings around the current plan. I'm currently right now meeting with all 13 consolidation communities. I'm about a third of the way through that. And we're listening. It's a draft plan. We're refining. We're also having conversations like this or as requested, like we were at Pickle. Wherever our community needs us to be, we try to be there. I will be honest with you that it can't always be me. I try to be there. I love being with our community. Many of you that know me, I will show up and I will be there until the latest hour. But I also want to acknowledge that we are a big team and you have all of our support through this process, and those will continue on. So back behind me is a list of the different engagements that we've had along the way. You can see what we've done and where we're going. Also, we have been very intentional about providing comment cards, and today we've received 6,000 comment cards. The vast majority are around boundary changes, the honest truth. They're organized, and I will tell you, we're going through every one of them. Every one of them. We're providing responses, we're finding themes, we're making adjustments, we're learning, we're refining, and on Friday, when we upload the next draft, you will see all of those comments, and you will see how we work through them. And some of them won't be what maybe everybody wants to see, but if they're not, you'll understand why, or you'll see why, and you'll also see that there are many times conflicts in these comments for the same community, where a community may want this, and the same community may want something else. And so we are doing our best to work through that. We'll also have a work session that's tomorrow with our Board of Trustees, where we're going to talk through kind of the 7 bigger areas that are anchor points in the plan that we just need to get consensus on. I don't have the ability to talk to our trustees all together. It's always one-on-one. And so this is a really important moment for us. We're going to have areas that we focus on, and my hope is that we come out of that with some clarity around kind of maybe the next steps on the plan. Let me go to the next slide. How will Austin ISD ensure equitable access to strong programs across the new consolidated campuses? So the first thing I want to acknowledge is in Austin ISD, there's been a lot of conversations over the last year, I see Sharon in the back, about the academic plan. Matias, where's the academic plan? And I want to acknowledge that when we talk about an academic plan and academic vision, this is an 18-month process. It really is. At one point, I proposed start with a portrait of a graduate, then do an academic vision, academic framework that ensure that every element of the system is responsive to that academic plan and vision. And the challenge that we had at the time is there was so much pressure in the system, responding to a TA agreed order, going through the tax rate election, addressing the vacancies that we had, so much weight that it never really got to a point where we could release the kind of timeline and effort to get through that process. Now, I want you to be really clear, I want to be really clear, we have been not working in a vacuum. Our trustees are very, very clear around where their values are. You see them reflected in our scorecard goals. We have initiatives that we produce that are on our website. And so we have the long-range plan, we have the equity assessment, we have many things that help inform where we are now. We are committed under Dr. Maxwell's work, who's now over K through 12 academics, to lead that work in partnership with our trustees. And so over the next many weeks, you'll see some of that be codified. But I want you to know we have not been working in a vacuum. But it doesn't show itself as a salient kind of independent deliverable. But I also understand how important that is. So the goal is to progress that, but know that it's a much larger effort, and it should be done with community. It cannot be done in isolation with just the board and the administration. The dual language program moves. I talked about this earlier. We have 4 wall-to-wall dual language programs, right? They're at Becker, we have at Riley, Ridgetop, and we have at Sunset Valley, the other one. These have been in place for quite some time, and one of the things that we've run into over the last couple of years is this staffing shortage for teachers who are certified. Our policy says that once you have 18 students who are identified as emergent bilingual, we will provide the educator with the certification, and that's our commitment. We are leaning into dual language when other school districts around us are leaning away from it. Now, what that means is that if you have a student population that is going in the wrong direction, meaning that the emergent bilingual student population is going from 20%, 18%, 14%, 12%, you're quickly going to get to a point where by board policy, we are not going to be able to staff the dual language certified educator there. And what that means is that you're going to have to ensure that we place those educators where emergent bilingual students are. And we have 58 dual language programs in Austin. So these are not just the only 4. I've heard that before. Matias, if you move these, that you're moving the only 4. No, we have 58 of them. And so for us as a school district, I'm really trying to anticipate this future scenario in which we do not have the staff in place. And by law, I'm required to ensure that the certified teacher is in the classroom with the emergent bilingual student. And to provide access to our emergent bilingual students, I need to move these programs. So you can see kind of what that movement looks like. We understand where our emergent bilingual students live. We know that if we move and provide access, and that may include transportation, I understand that we will create a healthy balance of emergent bilingual and non-emergent bilingual students, and then ultimately sustain the programs for years to come. I do not want families in those neighborhoods to not feel welcome. In fact, we're moving them to welcome them and have them participate and engage and be part of those programs. That's going to require us doing our job better, but this plan attempts to improve it. How will the district mitigate negative impacts on students, communities, especially those already being underserved? So this is what it's all about. When we talk about transition planning, and you heard me talk earlier about not doing something quickly, I'm not going to make a change in a spring semester. I have to make a decision, and I'm urging our board to make a decision in November. The one thing I will tell you is that whenever there's a disruption to our community, it adversely impacts Black and brown students to a greater degree. That is research-based. That is proven. So the way that you mitigate that is provide as much time as possible. You plan. You spend time with community building those plans. And that's what we intend to do. So you'll see kind of what that looks like. We have transition staff planning. There's been conversations that I heard someone said that there's a Facebook page where someone said, Matias is going to lay off 700 teachers. Do you understand how egregious that is to someone like me who is doing everything possible to show love and supporting our educators? I would never, ever, ever say that, nor would we ever do it. And our board is right there with me. We have been really intentional about creating a plan that allows for our educators, our professionals that have been with us to stay with us. Now, each plan has a slightly different requirement, and so we're going to match and we're going to make sure that it works best, but we're also going to take our teachers' input. We have surveys that will be released. We've had educators that say, Matias, I've been working in South Austin, but I live in North Austin the last 20 years. I want to try something different. That is okay. But we are not hiring a single outside person in this organization until every person in Austin ISD who is impacted by these changes has had multiple opportunities of finding a home. So if you want to be in Austin ISD, you will be in Austin ISD. I've never once looked at contracts. Someone asked me, Matias, you're looking at 2- and 3-year contracts? Never even crossed my mind. That's not who we are. That's not who I am. So just for the educators in the room, for those of you that speak to them, just know that our board and I believe in our educators. I would not be here sitting with you if it wasn't for AISD teachers, including my mom. This is really hard to hear when there are ideas out there that we do something different. So those plans are in our board documents. We're refining them and improving them, so you'll see those there. Transition planning. This is something that's going to be different for every community, right? We have to talk about, if you have 2 communities coming together, what does that look like? Are the student demographics similar? In some cases, they are. What are the needs of our special education students receiving special education services? What transition plans do they need? Do we have the resources at the receiving school? What do we need to do? All of those things are part of a plan, but they cannot be Matias's plan or the administration's plan. It needs to be a plan that's built with the community, with our schools at the table, which is why the time is so necessary. If I wait till the spring to make a decision, or if we make a decision late in the spring, you will have no time to ensure a thoughtful, equitable, responsive plan. And if you don't, then there's zero chance it'll be done well and implemented successfully in the start of the school year in August of 2026. So we're being very intentional. You'll see on the October 30th upload a framework, the expectations that I have of these plans, the KPIs, the key performance indicators that I'm going to use to track progress on these. That will also be a resource so that if anybody wants to see, what is Matias looking for, or what are we looking for, you will see it. How do PTAs come together? How do you honor the legacy of the school that is being moved out of? What process may exist for repurposing, which will be downstream, but we got to talk about it. We can continue on. I want to get to questions, I'm sure. Okay. Reverend Lance. Okay. Appreciate you. So I just want to take a moment. There are lots of people that I've met in my journey. There are very few people who have given me as much grace as this gentleman to my left. Honestly, I feel like there have been times, there have been a couple times where there's been some challenging conversations that we've had, and I've never felt unwelcome in his presence. And I want you to know I very much appreciate that, one engineer to another, so thank you.
Thank you.
He's all.
So the superintendent has a hard stop at 7:30.
I will be here as long. That's whatever.
Well, that's what we were told.
Okay. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
we will be here.
Okay.
As long as you let me get rid of this tie, like I don't.
Well, I didn't wear mine.
I wanted to,
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Right. But now AISD is facing what we consider two major challenges. And so the reason that we wanted to meet is to talk about how those challenges will be addressed. One is that you're looking at about 25,000 empty seats. Is that estimate anywhere near in the ballpark?
So it's about 22,000. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And at the same time, you're looking at a shortfall of somewhere between 19 and 20 million dollars.
It's even greater than that because that
Greater.
includes real estate offsets for this fiscal year. So we think about long-term reductions. It needs to be greater than that number.
So if you're proposing, well, first of all, none of us believe that your job is easy. So when we're asking questions, it's not because we believe that you're just out playing hockey or something. We know your job is not easy. And a superintendent's job is unfortunately always with a target on your back. So we understand that. But I believe that you can appreciate that families, parents particularly, are very concerned about the outcomes of whatever you're doing as it relates to their children. So we wanted to open up a dialogue that would involve the parent, involve the community in the conversation. You got bosses already, but their bosses are us. So your bosses, yes, that's real, but their bosses are we're their boss, right? So, and ultimately, that's the way it runs out. I mean, that's what the whole democratic process is about. At least it's supposed to be. So, okay, scratch that and take that off the tape, right? Yeah, take that off. The point I want to make, though, is that we believe we can help. Now, the question is that can you and your people be imaginative enough to find ways to allow us to help and move out any of the conflict and confrontation, because we don't really have the time. Listening to you just now tells me we don't have time to engage in conflict and confrontation. So if that's the case, then how do we help you get to the goal that we want? Now you notice that, because we believe that you want what we want. Is that?
I want, like.
Help me. Now don't leave me out of here.
Trust me. We want the same thing. There's no doubt.
All right, good.
I don't want to.
No, you're on.
Okay.
I wanted to give you that break, but then we were trying to get you out by
Okay.
time.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Okay.
So Reverend Lanz is exactly right. Like there's this balance that we're navigating right now. It is how to do the best we can within the pressures of the system that we find ourselves, and many other school districts as well, and not do something that introduces a risk so great that it takes away local control. Like that's really where it all comes together. And it's a very hard place to be. Like I'm terrified. Like, I mean, I just am. It's hard. You know, there are changes that I am having to ultimately going to be required recommend that impact our community that I've lived in my entire life, our staff, our families. This is hard. It's really hard. But I also do not want to be the superintendent who avoids a hard decision and puts us in a position later where we lose control. I have studied other school districts, and there are school districts right now who are wishing they would have made different decisions 2 or 3 years prior. And so when we have conversations community to community, it is real because it's your student. It is real because it's your neighborhood. It is real because you pay taxes and you are a part of this community. Oftentimes it's hard because I have to take that and then also recognize that there are 70,000 souls that we are responsible for educating every day in Austin ISD. And at the end of the day, that as a system is what I have to be responsive to while understanding as best I can, though I never will, each and every person that I meet's lived experience. And I don't know, there is no perfect solution. Like there just isn't. If I could go back in time, I can promise you there are things I would have done 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago. The list goes on and on. And I take full responsibility for the inaction of Austin ISD for the last multiple decades. But the reality is that we're 144 years old. We are a mature school district. We have learned bad habits along the way. And I will tell you that 20 years from now, if you could look back and see that we aligned feeder patterns at East Austin, I mean, that's a game changer. If you can look back and see that the progress we've made over the last year and a half about improving student outcomes and that our black and brown students are on grade level, but not because we are good at taking tests, but because we're good at learning, at teaching how to love learning, like that's who we want to be. And so it's hard. It's really hard. Yeah, so and I'm sorry, I just kind of like started talking there, I apologize.
No worries. I figured I'd kick us off. So I am a resident down the street. My son was districted. Thank you. Is it on? Thank you. I've lived in the community now for 14 years at my house down the street at 51st and Manor. We originally were districted to Pecan Springs, but my son was going to start kindergarten and they were tearing the building down midway. And so we didn't want to start kindergarten that way. We tried to get on wait lists to Blanton, Maplewood, Wynn, Ridgetop, and Riley. We didn't get into anything. We ended up at Breckerwoods. So we're a District 1 transfer. Now, that was really emotional, leaving my community where I spent all of my time, and these are all of my neighbors. We drive there every day. He's doing great. Obviously, Breckerwoods is on the transfer list. I know you've heard a lot from us, or on the consolidation list. My issue, though, is that you are grandfathering transfers for existing schools that are not closing because you recognize the social harm that that causes, right, in that continuity. Now, for us, as a district transfer of a closing school, my son will not continue with his classmates, and what I'm faced with, and this is a hard thing to say, what I'm faced with is coming back into my community where, quite frankly, the school is performing better where he's at. And his academic progress right now is really good. And I want to follow you on this, but saying wait until summer for an academic plan, that is not what I can deal with.
So just to, I very much appreciate that. And I would ask you, what in the academic plan is going to change how we support your student right now? Because I want you to know that the things I described in the work we're doing around aligning curriculum. So this is an example. 2 years ago, we had 15 different curriculum that we were managing in Austin ISD. I mean, and we talked about earned autonomy. That's something we talked about a lot. And I think that there are lots of school districts that don't look like us that can benefit from that type of structure. The reality of it all is, though, that when you have students who have to move because rent went up 20%, and they go to a different school, they go into that school, a different scope and sequence, and the school struggles to find out where they are in their academic journey, and they go back to the school they came from in a completely different curriculum. Like, that is an adverse impact, like, to how we support, like, early learning, right? And or just learning in general, like our approach to curriculum. And so there is significant value, and we are committed. But I also would maybe I need to do a better job of communicating what we've done and what we are doing. Because when I look at where we are now, the agent of change in a school system is our teachers, right? That's the honest truth. we're 97.4% staff now. 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we were at 84%, 82%. You know, I could look in parts of Austin and see a student who had a first-year teacher 3 years in a row. I'm a different superintendent than I was in the first year and the second year, and I'm not, you know, people just grow. And so it's incumbent upon us to communicate to our entire community where we are, what we've been doing, and how we're going to support your student. But I don't want, and I feel challenged about saying that all of a sudden that one document is going to change all of it. Because reality is that I have to implement that plan. And implementation is where Austin ISD historically has failed. We're great at making plans. We make plans all the time. I can go back to 2011, 13, 15, 17, 19, where we had these plans. We had a strategic plan from 2020 to 2025. None of that got implemented. And so my goal, and I will never, ever do something that I know I can't implement. And so we're going to do the work, we're going to build the plan, and we're going to show our work now. Like, we're going to start to see it. So you don't have to wait till April. But I want you to know that it's not going to be the comprehensive 18-month plan that you would typically get if we didn't have all the pressures that we would have. Regarding the transfer, we are making adjustments in the transfer policies to ensure that students who do transfer into a school can then move with that cohort wherever they go. So you will see that change in the next version. The other change that you're going to see is sibling transfers. Our board and we will never ask a family to go drop off a third grader and then go drop off a first grader. That's crazy. Like, we're not going to do it. We approve all of them, so we're just going to say, I guarantee it. Like, we're just going to do it. Yeah, so one of the things that I want to acknowledge is that when we did the transfer policies in the original plan for October 30th, we did kind of higher level changes. And now that we've seen all the different scenarios in the plan and gotten feedback, we're making changes to be very precise and say, if you're here, this is your student, this is your experience, this is how we're going to support your student through that transfer. 5th and 8th graders, same thing. So we're really going to be responsive to that. So I appreciate that comment, and those are one of the things that we're going to be incorporating. Good.
I'm shorter.
No, it's okay.
I'm also a longtime Austinite, grew up here. I think we actually went to middle school together at Covington.
Covington?
Covington, Mr. Harris.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yes.
We did go to, yeah, yeah.
Yes, Covington Colts. I'm also a longtime East Austin native, 20-year education professional, and mom of 3. And I have a question I wrote down, so I won't forget it. You mentioned teachers. You mentioned things within control. The number one factor in a school district's control that determines student achievement is the teacher, not buildings and not programs. So that means our neediest students need teachers who have demonstrated that they can make big gains in moving students forward academically. I don't see that reflected currently in Austin ISD. I don't see it reflected in this plan, and I'm asking if you are going to commit to ensuring that our Title I schools get the best teachers as determined by student achievement gains.
Yeah, great question. I love that question. I'm going to share with you just a brief background about kind of the challenges that I had as I moved into the role, doing precisely what you're suggesting. And I don't disagree, but I want to share with you kind of some of the context that we have to operate in. So in Austin ISD, historically, we have not moved educators, right? It hasn't been something that we have leaned into. There's a variety of reasons. I'm not going to go kind of into why that happened. But generally speaking, that wasn't what we did, right? I would argue that our educators need to have high expectations of our students. We need to have high expectations of our chief of staff, CFO. Everybody in the organization needs to have high expectations. The way that you show love to people is have high expectations. When I look at the rigor, when I look at some of the variances in our system, I see that some students, ones that tend to look like me, aren't going through that productive struggle, right? They are not challenged, and so for us as an organization, we have to understand why is that occurring. And as we move forward, what I will tell you what we've done over the last 18 months, they're not reflected in the plan because they're things that we've already begun to do. In 2023 and 2024, we created an SRI index. For those, Principal Estes knows this, but it's a support and resource index. And what it did is it took every school based on demographics of the student population and said, these schools just need more support. We did band 1, band 2, band 3, band 4. We then said every system, I don't care if you're doing work orders and operations or if you're hiring staff and talent and strategy, you will be responsive to these schools and you will prioritize those schools in band 1, primarily Title I schools. So how does that translate? In 23-24, in 22-23, what we did is when we have a hiring fair, we did pre-hires. Every Title I school had access to these educators first. When we did a career fair, we opened the doors early for only those schools that were hiring at Title I schools. We also put them at the front. Like if you're going to a casino, right? Like be hyper thoughtful about everything you do to get educators in the classroom. So what happened? You began to see the vacancy rate go way down in Title I schools. Then the question becomes, how are we ensuring that we have strong educators? Because if you just rely on student achievement, you could be missing things, right? Like what do our students need? Are we bringing balance? Are we leaning into SEL? Are we building into like who we are? Because just having student outcomes doesn't necessarily mean that you are, in my opinion, always a highly effective educator, right? There's so many more things that come to it. So what we've done since then is said, okay, now we know where our educators are. We know who is identified as a stronger educator. And what you saw this year that you haven't seen before, and Principal Estes, he's the only principal here, so I keep calling on him, is that we actually moved educators. But we didn't do it in an abrupt way and say, hey, I need you to come to this school. What we said is, hey, Principal Estes, you have these 5 educators. They are strong. We believe that the way they instruct will be powerful for our students in this part of Austin. Can you have a conversation? Can you tell me who I should approach? We sent letters out, and then all of a sudden, in a very thoughtful, ethical, responsive way, we got teachers from all across the district to go to the schools that needed them the most. And it wasn't, you have to be here forever. Let's start with 2 or 3 years, and many of them want to stay. So I will tell you that we are moving our responsiveness to teacher placement, educator placement, to be kind of more in alignment with your approach. I'm committed to doing it. It's not in this plan because it's kind of bigger than this whole plan. It's something that we need to be doing regardless. But I also don't want anybody to leave this room thinking that student achievement equates or is equal to highly effective teachers, because there's so much that goes into teaching than just getting the scores on STAR, which is, and this is the challenge I go back and forth. So that's what I'm struggling with. But we've been making those changes. I can certainly respond and add more detail of what you'll expect from us moving forward. But yes, that is absolutely our expectation. Here's the other thing that is sometimes viewed differently for me. If you have anybody in the school district that does not have high expectations of our students, my question is, do you belong in Austin ISD? Like, that's the honest truth. That hasn't been always the case. But that is how I approach things. That is what we're doing. That's what this team and I are doing. So I hope that you see that, but that's what we've done. We have evidence of it working, and we're going to continue to do it, and I can reflect that in the next, maybe not the October 30th, but the one after that update. Is that helpful?
We're getting there.
Okay, yeah, we're getting there. But I also want you to know, I track vacancies and hirings at all of our Title I schools through KPIs. I have reports. I'm understanding what the RFEs are. I talk to principals when I meet with them. This is, I need to understand where you're at and what I need to do to help you. So that's how we're doing it now, and it's very different than what we've done in the past. Sorry.
No, it's great. I agree. It is very different than what was done in the past, and it is important changes. One of the things I really appreciated about the start of the deliverable was there was a commentary that there have been really strong relationships and not always paired with grade level education, right? Instruction. And so one of the challenges I think that we experience as a community is there is a belief that the difference is the educator rather than the difference is the resource, the vacancies, being able to raise thousands of dollars to hire your own instructional specialist because the district didn't give you one, right? And so, and so one of the challenges that we are having, I think, it is a communication one, which is folks are really scared to experience what we experience every day. And so people are also really surprised. Like, it's really hard for them to believe that the difference is how the district relates to us, because they've never experienced the district relate to them that way, right? And so it's really easy to just think that like Black and brown people aren't that smart, as opposed to the classrooms where children are failing to meet grade level expectations, or classrooms where there either was no teacher or the content taught was not taught at grade level. And so that also needs to be part of the story. Like, I do really appreciate that there was some acknowledgement there, and I think while it is kind of like vulnerable, it's great that you are tracking those vacancies, and I know that there is a place on the website where you can see them. You gotta look kind of hard to really dig into it, but I do think that that's an important part of the story that often is missed. And I also do want to say I've been at like too many meetings for a person who is not getting paid to do this work. And one of the challenges I keep experiencing is the buck stops with you, and sometimes people do not take accountability for their role. And so I want to raise that to you.
I wish I could high five you. I can't.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's a big part of this system that needs to change.
Yeah.
It's not, I couldn't tell you how many times it's, well, Matias said this, or Matias said that, Matias said this. And I tell them, when you are hired, you are responsible for educating these students.
Yes, I've been told that our TAP plan was selected by you. And so, which is interesting, because I'm on the TAP writing team, but I was told that you've already written it. And related to that, so that's a real challenge we have. And so when we are looking at transition, which I know is really important, and I'm really glad to hear you have KPIs related to what happens afterwards, having a point person who has a boss who is allowed to talk about organization, because your boss is not allowed to talk about the organization and give you tips and tricks on what exactly to do. So there needs to be someone in the organization who has a boss to be accountable to. Because unfortunately, the boss that we hired, they're not allowed to talk to you about operations. So someone needs to be responsible for that. That is a tip that I have from one manager to another, that managers need managers. So, and I hope that's something that you can include. Mr.
So I did want to speak to what you said about teachers, and it's absolutely true. And I want to go back to the comment about Riker Woods versus what you see in classrooms in East Austin, because prior to this role, I spent time all over the district and elementary schools. And it's very unfortunate that there's an idea that teachers in East Austin are doing less than teachers elsewhere. I can tell you from walking this district, it is not the case.
No, it's typically more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, actually quite often, the difference is the level that students enter kindergarten, right? So I can not be a super effective teacher, but if you send me a student that can read, I'm gonna look like I'm rocking it every day, right?
Absolutely.
And so right now, our responsibility is to help the teachers with a little bit extra. One thing that we've done over the last 2 years, which is a struggle, one of our biggest challenges has been the autonomy that we've had in this district. And I will say, as a principal that benefited greatly from autonomy, it doesn't always work well when you have principals that are new, when you have teachers that are new. You have to give people structures and guidelines and training wheels, so to speak. And once you're up and running, then you gain a little autonomy at a time. And we didn't do that. It was to each its own. You could go to one campus and you could go to 5 classrooms and they were teaching 5 different things with 5 different resources. And really, it's the luck of the teacher that a parent gets, right? And we know that because we have parents requesting a certain teacher. So you guys have figured it out. And so our job is to make things more standard so that I can go to Riker Woods and see solid instruction, that challenges the student. So not writing out the fact that the student can already read, but what are the goals for the student so that this year is productive for them. And then I can go to East Austin and see similar resources. Maybe some strategies are different, but we're exposing all of our students to high-level curriculum, which we have not done because we haven't always believed that every first grader deserves to have curriculum and instruction at least at the first grade level. So these are some things that we are trying to account for. I can say last year I visited Mills Elementary, and I saw the kindergarten teacher teaching math, and she was using a resource and she was using strategies. And then the same week I went to Walnut Creek. Same high-level resource, same strategies. And that may seem like super simple if you've not seen what we had before, right? And so it took a lot of push, but it's what's right for our students. But I did want to, like, I couldn't sit and let the whole, like, this is going great at my school and it's not going great because that's not always the case.
I really appreciate that you shared that, especially because a lot of us are having big changes this year because it is just lately that these changes are happening. And I do appreciate the shared sacrifice of folks having changes all over the district and not just in the places that were lower resources from a long time ago.
We're approaching that time when we're going to have to really be getting ready to get out of here. So I would ask that when you come up, if you could make your comments within that 2 to 3 minute time frame so that the superintendent will have an opportunity to address them and we can get as many people as we can up to the microphone.
I'll be quicker too, I'm sorry.
No, thank you. I'm kind of losing my voice with cold here, but thank you again for spending time with us tonight. You know, I'm a native Austinite. I tutored in Spanish to kindergartners at Metz Elementary. I was an avid tutor at Johnston High, and I taught in urban schools in Houston, and I worked for DC Public Schools. So I've have experience in education. I know what you're doing is really hard. I'm here today really to talk about the boundary changes. I know that that's been on the comment cards, and you know, I think, you know, my big concern is the, you know, I don't want to call it resegregation. I know that the using of I-35 as a natural boundary, I think there is some advantages to socioeconomic integration with schools coming together, East and West. I came from a family, I'm a first generation college student. My dad went to the 8th grade. He was an older parent, so he literally grew up in Jim Crow South. And when I went to school, he always knew education was important. To this day, does not know how to use a computer, but bought me a computer in '93 and it's like, okay, you're gonna learn typing, you're gonna do this. And you know, that's how I learned Spanish, using my computer, and my daughter has like native fluency now. But the integration is important because you have these conversations. You know, I'm in high school, well, what is Princeton Review? Oh, it's this I'm taking because I'm gonna, you know, study for college. Oh, I go in home, hey, I need to take this class. So using I-35, I'm concerned as a natural boundary. I know that we really want to align feeder patterns and get people to where they can stay with their community, but I'm concerned about the academic programs that are just not there yet. So, like, I would love to welcome people back home to Eastside Early College High School. I know that was the original L.C. Anderson. People want to be welcome back home. But, for example, my child that speaks Spanish fluently and Mandarin and is in advanced math and all these other classes, are there going to be an offering? Just saying we have good schools everywhere, are those classes offered in Eastside? You know, they're not there now. So my concern with the boundary changes is I think there is some advantage and opportunities of integrating communities like Lee Elementary and Campbell and other schools, bringing them together at middle school in Keeling and having them go to a McCallum together. Maybe not McCallum because it's so far, but Austin High is right there. And I'm very concerned about taking I-35 and saying, okay, we're there now, everybody go back to your places, that is very concerning to me. And I know in a lot of the Zooms, there was a lot of South Austin residents concerned about boundary changes, and there hasn't been a lot of talk in East Austin, but we need to talk about those things, because normally you would work from the backwards. You know, understanding by design says you think with the end in mind, and I think that's where parents are concerned. We don't see the end. We need, you know, I've worked in charter schools too. The thing that charter schools do is they sell it. They sell the marketing and the vision. They're not better. Public schools are better. Our public schools are better, and they support, because a lot of those kids with SPED plans are back at the public schools. It's all marketing. But what I'm saying is they sell the vision, and we're not really seeing that sold vision, and just telling us is not going to do it. You need to show us, and we, you know, saying, okay, well, when students sign up, we'll see what students want. You know, that's why kids are, you know, some of these schools are over-enrolled, especially at the middle school and high school level, and some are under-enrolled. So that's one thing. I'm concerned about the East Austin boundaries and what kind of consideration to ask what people want before placing them back there on the east side. And my second concern is, as a parent with a child in dual language, this has been a concern. I've worked with Mr. Overton on this during COVID, but we do not have enough Black children in these two-way dual language programs. They're not represented. And moving the wall to non-zone, I'm scared, because you have to enter two-way DL at first grade, kinder or first. First is still hard. So kids at schools like Pickle, if they're a Black child and they're in second, third, or fourth, or fifth, they're moving. They have no option to stay. So what are we going to do to get more Black children in two-way dual language? Because we know that it benefits all children. They outperform their peers. That's my second thing. So what are we going to do to get more? And I'm very concerned about the changing of the boundaries in East Austin when the programs are not there. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. Great questions. So I'll do a quick response. The first thing I would say is, the way that we've been doing, so the Universal Choice Sheet came out in 2023, and the intention of that Universal Choice Sheet was so that every student and every family had the ability to select what they wanted, not just what was available. Now we find ourselves at a time in this transition where not having it available may determine whether you even go to that school, right? Like maybe whether you even enroll or register or not. And so one of the things that we're doing right now is we're looking at where we have shifts in students from middle school to high school, where we're seeing a change or a difference in the academic programming at school A versus school B. I've seen it between, you know, here at Alltown McCallum and Eastside Early College High School. I've heard about it from Crockett to Austin High. Two things are happening. One, yes, we're analyzing and we can see those programs and we can start them up even before students get there. The other thing that's happening is there are also really great programs that are already at that school. Sometimes our families think that AP is the route, but really over here we have, you know, dual credit and we have like other opportunities, but they're different. And so we as a district have to communicate, A, how they're different. They're both incredible opportunities, incredible avenues that those schools have built up. And where we need to your point, we need to seed and invest and support even before the student gets there. We're doing that work now. You will see that come out over the next probably about 3 weeks. And so the other thing I would say is you talked about integration, like kind of, or,
The majority minority, you can't do that anymore given our current environment that we're
Yeah.
living in. If a student does not want to go to that school, they're not going to be able to transfer. And, you know, let's say they're an East Austin student, they're taking Mandarin, you know, and they're the only student taking Mandarin east of I-35. Eastside Early College High School isn't offering that, but they can't go
Yeah.
to, they have no choice. So that's my challenge.
Yeah.
There's less choice.
yeah, and we can move programs. Yeah. Sorry. I need to stop talking so much. I know I need to stop talking so much. Yeah.
So if you can be considerate when you're asking your question so that he'll be able to answer it and get to the next person, we would greatly appreciate it. Because he did have a hard stop at 7:30. He's being gracious to stay here a little bit longer and ask the question, but you need to let us know when you gotta.
Okay. I appreciate that. So we are gonna that is so the boundary. So what's happening right now is you're running into multiple conflicts in the kind of guiding principles, right? You heard me talk about feeder pattern alignment as being something we wanted to achieve. Well, if you create a change and you create a split, we just have to acknowledge that, and I need to communicate to our trustees that this is maybe a different strategy, but in exchange for that, you get this perhaps alternative pathway. But the other argument I would say is once you have aligned feeder patterns, we as a community get to select what programs, like we can change our programs, what are fixed or where our schools are and where our students live. We get to control everything else. So we are tackling that. It's not gonna, I don't think we're ever gonna be able to get to a place where you can integrate that way. And what I've heard is also counter to that is proximity to privilege doesn't always ultimately end up in the best interest of our students who've been historically underserved. And so I've heard it both ways. I'm really trying to tackle this, but that's where we are. We are making improvements to refine it. I'm sorry, go ahead, ma'am. Okay, do you want to?
I'll quickly answer the dual language question. So we recognize that we need to provide more opportunities to our Black students to participate in dual language. So I actually was one of the administrators when we brought dual language into Becker. And I can say that we have not been thoughtful in every aspect of implementing that program. So a few years ago, in an effort to increase the number of Black students in dual language, we literally called parents and said, hey, give dual language a try. What we didn't do was help to plan, help to prepare the teachers, help to make sure that the students that we were putting in dual language classrooms saw themselves in those classrooms, and they didn't always feel welcome, and within 6 weeks they'd gone back to ESL. So we have to take that learning and make sure that we get the culture and climate right. It's not just about the number of minutes that you get in English versus in Spanish. You have to see yourself in that space. I had the experience as a leader, right? Like, did I see myself in that space? And so my lived experience, I think, kind of gives me an insight to how our students felt. But it's definitely something that we're working on and that we have a plan around. We just need to do more groundwork before we place students in classrooms.
Yeah, I'm a social worker and I have high schoolers. And one thing that I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, and I appreciate the discussion about elementaries. My kids went to Maplewood. I'm heartsick that it's closed, but I want to talk high school. And one thing I'd like to see, and I know we don't have a lot of time, is in the next couple months, because I get there's a lot of things happening here we can't control with the state. And one thing I just want to give a shout out for is Travis County, on the whole, did not vote for this. So one thing to give to the people of Austin is we voted for a different leadership. We're with you. We don't want this to happen. I would love to see a thoughtful plan about adolescence. It is a really critical time of development, and anybody who has a kid applying to college knows that that AP and dual credit isn't always equivalent for college. We need that AP program on the East Side. I want to hear how the high schools of the East Side are going to be supported. Make them irresistible. I would love that, right?
Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah.
We need a plan. I have a kid who's going to go into 9th grade soon. I want to feel good about Northeast. I want to feel excited about all of our East Side high schools, and I want all of those kids to have access to Mandarin and all of those things. So ditto to what you said, but I really have not seen anything yet about teenagers. And where they go to high school is so important. So could we just think about those teenagers? That's all I wanted to say.
I've got 2 at home. I'm right there with you.
Where do they go to school?
Huh?
Where do they go to school?
Austin High. I mean, that's where we live. I mean, I'm sorry. That's not.
Hi,
Sunset Valley, Blazier, Lively. That's where they went to school.
I'm here representing Go Valley Elementary. I work there and I wrote out my notes, so hopefully it won't take too long. AISD says that they want strong neighborhood schools. It's up there. Every family should have access to an excellent neighborhood school, but the plan as it is written is destroying the neighborhood. So they're getting neighborhood schools, but they're destroying the Go Valley community neighborhood. Even with this presentation, there's been no talk about Montessori, which is what is coming to Go Valley. I've asked questions. There's been a lot of talk surrounding the 13 campuses are closing, but not about the schools that are getting whole program changes and becoming non-zoned schools. My community is losing trust in the district because every time we have something good and something good is going, it is taken away from us. So we got like our administration, everything's been taken away. We felt blindsided because at no point was there at least communication to us that program changes for whole schools was on the table. It was just regarding consolidations. My schools also, or my students are losing their elementary and their middle school because Martin is slated to close as well. I want to know at what point were wall-to-wall program changes considered for whole elementary schools, and what and how was that communicated to the East Side community?
Yeah. So this is one of those things where we're trying to address multiple things at the same time, right? And when Montessori, we talk about the challenges that we're navigating. The honest truth is that there are 3 UA campus, right? And what we know is that, and we can get into the arguments, we can talk about it, but ultimately speaking, the current configuration of Win Montessori and AISD's inability to kind of respond historically has gotten us to a point where we have to take action to break the accountability chain. You have 3 UAs, right? Where Montessori has been observed to be successful in large urban school districts in the state of Texas, they tend to have an unassigned attendance boundary, right? That's just what we've seen. And I know I see Win Montessori contingent here, and so good to see y'all. And so when we looked at our approach, we said, okay, how can we, because what I was told as we moved through the process is, hey, there's 200 families that are trying to get into Win Montessori. It's a program that's desirable. It's something we have to figure out if we're going to create opportunities for families in Austin. And I also heard, as Matias, we cannot close or overly impact schools in East Austin. So the reality is that we have too many seats between Govali, Zavala, Ortega, Sanchez. I mean, we have too many seats, over like several thousand. And so if we do not do a program move, the concern is that the alternative solution to still get to a place where you remove seats is to close an East Side school. And so this is one of those things where 2 things were coming together, and we tried to find a solution that did not close an East Austin school. I understand the program has changed, and I certainly understand that rezoning feels like a closure. We are taking input, we're trying to refine. There's been different questions around, could it go to a different location? You know, we're having that conversation. I intend to bring it to our trustees tomorrow in the work session. The question becomes, okay, so where does it go? And what happens to that school? So at the same time, if that was to be the case, then you still have excess seats between Govali, Ortega, Zavala, and Sanchez. I want to respond to this question. I want you to communicate. I want you to understand what we had to navigate to get to this point. We are having conversations with our trustees. I never want to introduce a new school without talking about it with our trustees first. I don't want to create fear in the community about this school or that school or that school. We're not going to do that. What I'm going to do is go to our trustees, tell our trustees what we've heard, look at different solutions, and then take that away and come up with a refined plan. That's how we're going to do it. But I acknowledge that, and I also understand. I mean, I know Deanna. I brought her into that space. I know you. I mean, I love Go Valley. I supported the 2017 bond program. I oversaw all of that. I understand the disruption, but we're trying to address multiple things at the same time. So we're looking into it, and that's how it's going to play out tomorrow.
Okay, and I just want to add to that you're taking away the 2 modernized schools that are in East Austin.
I'm sorry, but we have about 15 minutes left, and look at the line. So if you have a comment and you're not in line, then write it, please. Until then, if you have a comment, get in the line, and we'll try to make certain that the line is taken care of. But please don't just blurt out wherever you're sitting, because it seems like the thing to do. Now, Mr. Matias is just a nicer person than me. No, I'm serious about that. So, you know, if you want to say something, get in the line. If you don't want to get in the line, write it, please. Right.
Hello there. I'm a parent from Sanchez Elementary. It has came to my grave attention that there has been a failure. I don't know however you're going to address it by any means, by the spirit of Barbara Jordan, by the spirit of Ann Richards, by the spirit of not only that, but of Opal Lee. I see that we are in a district where there is no emphasis on the arts. Most parents view things, especially black and brown, as terms of self-expression. These kids need to express themselves. I'm originally not from here. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, where art is hyper-emphasized, so kids can gain a command of their own self-expression and then take it to many different venues. However, from what I have seen from the complete textbook that the teachers have to deliver is absolutely inoperable. You cannot explain some of these things that the whole district wants as education goals to these kids who God knows what they're going through at home. Is it even possible to contact the Senate for the Senate Special Education Committee to reemphasize as well as re-philosophize the education goals that laid down itself? Because it's one thing to have higher education programs, but it's another thing to understand the culture of the people who you are educating. Because if you do not understand the culture of the people that you are educating, then you lose the whole entire spirit of the education itself. And from what I have seen, it is a complete philosophical failure. There is no plans that can teach any of these children to express yourself, to love yourself, and also when you are out of school, or when you're out of school, to express yourself even further. You have a few brown people who were a part of the ISC. You had Mexican OT, and we all know that he was a rapper, but the main thing about rap is that you have to command the English language. And for me, wanting to put my own daughter in school, from which I want to teach her the thoroughness of the arts, I see that as a vacancy and probably the biggest failure here in the ISD district. How will you reemphasize upon that? Because if we do not have any of the arts that is present, then no one will be a part of any intellectual movements going forward.
So I'll hand to Lakeisha because you were talking about Sanchez, but I do want to emphasize, when it comes to Austin ISD, when you compare us to lots of other urbans or other school districts, the job that Philip Taylor has done, our Executive Director of Fine Arts, and the emphasis that we have as a school district, I think is actually very, very commendable. Now, I will say that in elementary school, it isn't as strong. We do have some schools that have kind of leaned in and created their own programming. That is an area of improvement for us. But a lot of what I hear is the opposite, is that there's a focus on fine arts and not athletics. And the reason I bring this up is because I genuinely believe that both fine arts and athletics are critical to having a healthy school system. There are many reasons why kids come to school. I would have never come to school unless it was for athletics. But we historically have not put athletics at the same bar as fine arts. But I do understand the question. I don't necessarily have a direct response for elementary school. Lakeisha can probably respond to that better than I can regarding specific programming that Sanchez or
Yeah, our essential areas is pretty standard. So every student has music, art, and PE on a rotating basis. What we do have, we have some campuses that have enrichment programs that are a bit stronger than others. A lot of it has to do with partnerships and resources made readily available. Like right off the top of my head, I think about the dance program at Sadler, right? That was a community effort, and it is a beautiful program. And what we have to do better at is helping to connect our campuses to the community resources so that we can provide equitable opportunities across the board. Because you're exactly right about arts helping you to express yourself. It helps students channel their energy, which we know. We have students that have a bit energy, and sometimes it depends on what you look like as to how that's addressed. And being able to express yourself through arts is definitely helpful. So we acknowledge your comment, And again, that's part of the programming that we need to strengthen, so it's consistent across the district.
Good afternoon. Let me speak just a few seconds. Your data analysis, and I've worked with stuff like that, you need to go back, and I'm going to speak only on Oak Springs. You missed a lot of stuff in Oak Springs. You were a couple blocks away from Empowerment Zone. You're across the street from the Housing Authority, and you have to look at how you begin to look at that whole area as a different district. You have different apartment complexes coming online that haven't been taken into consideration. So when you start looking at Oak Springs, you have ACC there, you have the new high school there, and you start looking at it just as a district. I see Malik is here, and she and I sat until after 12 o'clock at night to get Campbell School because of Mrs. Scales pulled us in. I participated on the Forum in the Future with LBJ, and all the schools were supposed to feed up there. Supposed to be, at one point, LBJ would have been a total technical school. So when I hear the presentation, I say that's nice, but it's like going back and saying it doesn't mean anything. But the thing I would say to you is, you got to dig down into the community around Oak Springs. So you need to take Oak Springs off and look at it as what can you do to make it possible for Oak Springs. Now, I don't know about the other schools, but I know you haven't dug into the demographic data that's there to look at the new development, like I said, Empowerment District is there. I also know that the Admiral's son and his group put over several $1 million into that district. So there's opportunity to go beyond AISD, ACC, and all of them, and look at the fact that they're investing a lot of money, Springdale and Airport. So take Oak Springs off your list and look at it differently, and come back to the community with real plan as to how you can impact that area. The other thing I know about Oak Springs, years ago, the fire department put a fire engine out there because they didn't have a water sprinkler system. Every day he parked until he put the sprinkler system in. So there are things that, from a historical perspective, I always say nice data, but how did you end up with the East Austin schools? You say, well, we did it this way, this way, this way. Doesn't mean anything because you were headed that way without the data. And so you got to look at it and say, you got 40 years of misdirection of data. So you can't convince me that your data is correct. And I know I was over-researched for the state. Data is not correct because you can put factors into the data to get out of the data what you want.
So I thank you, sir. I appreciate the comment. What I will say is we use the data we have available to us. The demographer's report does include projections. It includes working with the city of Austin to identify different developments. We understand the student population, and the reality is that there just aren't that many students in that area. If we had everybody come, they still would not get close to filling the school up. And before, so this is one of those things that when we came to values initially in working with our community, busing is not something that we leaned into. The district has done that in the past and has created harm. So that was not something we leaned into, sir. I appreciate the comment. The one thing I will say is without the number of students there, what we know is that really 3 or 4 students can change accountability, and there's 3 F's that we're having to navigate. I hate that we're here. I wish we weren't. We're trying to find a solution that works. We understand that it's impactful and harmful, but that is what drove to this initial draft recommendation, or just draft in the plan.
Hi, we live in Windsor Park, and I wanted to ask a question about safe routes to school, and if that has been at any consideration in the new boundary plans. And I'm taking us as an example. My oldest daughter goes to Marshall. She can walk there. She went early this morning. She's staying late, and she can be independent, and she can really be part of that community. My youngest will go to Webb, and she would have to, in order to get there, she would have to cross 2 highways and one of the most dangerous roadways in Austin. I just want to know how you guys think about these things when you draw boundaries.
Yeah, so appreciate that. So a couple things that we take into account, first and foremost, is where our buildings are and where our students live. We start from there, we then begin to build up. We look into our kind of overall criteria, aligning feeder patterns. That was something, like I said before, it's something that we wanted to achieve because we have schools that have multiple splits. The other thing that we wanted to also acknowledge is that once you get past 2 miles or once you get past a hazardous route or intersection, we offer transportation. And so as a school district, you know, we have, once you get to middle schools and high schools, these boundaries get so large that you're going to cross usually some large arterial at some point. Yes, we do work with the city of Austin. Yes, Safe Routes to School is something that we spend lots of time working as we design new schools, as we plan. Does it always govern? Not necessarily, because they don't always have the resources to actually ensure that we actually can implement the Safe Routes to School. That's just, I mean, that's how it works in the city of Austin, right? Like it's not like we create a plan and all of a sudden things change for us. We are looking into this area. This is an area I've gotten lots of feedback on and comments on, trying to figure out how we can improve it. We are also making changes in our transfer policies so that there's less of a disruption. I'm not sure what grade your students are in, but if there's an overlap there, then you would have that. If not, then it sounds like no. But we are looking at this area specifically. We have heard the Windsor split is something that is problematic. What it's going to end up doing is running into another kind of either balanced enrollment or an alignment and feeder pattern, and then we're just going to have to share that with the board and say, hey, this is something that we can do or not do. If we don't do it, that's okay, but it's going to have this impact, and just move forward. What I want to get our community familiar with is revisiting boundaries on a more frequent cadence. Right now, we're doing it every like 100, and I mean, we're just not doing it very often, because that's why this feels so heavy, because it's so much at one time. So we are looking at that. We do consider that, but I can't speak specifically to where you live or where that path is, but that's how we approach it.
Thank you.
Of course.
Good evening. I am speaking as a community member on behalf of Oak Springs. I understand the school is very small. However, let's think about our kids. Number one, we're closing a East Austin school, and the school you have it going to is Blackshear. However, those kids, there won't be no transportation. We were told that there would be no bus transportation for these kids. That's what we were told in a meeting from AISD. And these kids have to travel, because it's about a mile, maybe a mile and a half, 1.2 miles. They have to go in the dark, and if anyone want to send their child under overpass, over a railroad track, in a drug-affected area, homeless population, busy street, and send a 5- and 6-year-old walking. Oak Springs was built for the community at Booker T and that community, if we understand our history. But that is being closed. On top of that, if you knew this and you knew the size, why would you even start construction on a new building? And then you send our students to Blackshear. If you drive by Blackshear, and students have driven by there, why are we going to another school that looks ugly? If you look, no, seriously, if you look on the outside, now these kids every day have to look, and they saw construction and the people wearing the helmets and building and talking about it. Now it's gone. So there's a pile of dirt, looks like a mess, and you talk about the children and the community. These parents that live in this community, some of them have no transportation. That's why those in Booker T and that surrounding areas go to Oak Springs. And then it goes back to, because you have the charter schools coming in and poaching all these children in this community. because the resources were not there. And I get it, and I thank you for admitting that and saying that the resources weren't always there. But the concern is now for the community is the safety of our children, and what does that do to our children, our black and brown children that attend that school that says, here we go again. We have community members saying, they don't understand, elementary kids, I think I can raise $100. Would that help? So we can stay here? We're taking kids and we having them walk in a drug-infested area and dark because we're a mile and a half, less than a mile away half where you're going to send them, and then you just have dirt where they started construction that they have to witness every single day. What does that tell them? They already feel, oh, we don't get anything. We don't get the nice things over here. We don't get the good things over here because of where we are and because of the way they look. We've got to change their mindset. And doing this doesn't. Why not have the kids from Blacksburg come over to a brand new building? Keep the kids at Oak Springs there. Change the name. It doesn't even matter. It's the concern and the safety I'm worried about.
Yeah.
God forbid I have a 6 or 7-year-old kid walking down Rosewood Avenue at 7, because it's a 30-minute walk for a normal person. But we know kids. I see the leaf. I'm going to pick it up. There's no horn on the train that comes across the track. You got homeless people. It just terrifies me that the district is allowing this happen to our children. And we want to make sure East Austin, but you're taking away from East Austin. Blacksburg is a historical school. History, I don't know if anyone knows history, but I'm gonna tell you, Blacksburg was the only school that African Americans go to elementary back in the day. It's old. Yes, but I'm gonna wrap it up though. Thank you. But that's what we want to see. Take that in consideration.
Yeah.
Take that back to the trustees and say, let's all do a community walk at dark and walk to Blacksburg.
So I'm going to try to respond quickly. The first thing I would say is we as a school district get to make those changes regarding transportation. So I think that the way the community was shared, it was really in response to our current policy, but we can change those policies. We've done it, in fact. There are schools right now that have policies that are less than that are less than a half a mile away. We can make those changes, and we will make those changes. That's one of the things that we heard from the community. The second thing is we looked at perhaps moving Blackshear to Oak Springs. One of the things that we talked about was Blackshear was the historic elementary school. And when you think about the student population of Blackshear going to Oak Springs is a smaller school. So they wouldn't all be able to fit in the new school. And so that's what drove us to go in this direction. Now, and again, it was because Blackshear was historic. We kept on thinking about Blackshear's historic, that's where the school needs to be. If one had to go, we were going to try to keep Blackshear and then ensure that students moved. Now, regarding the 2022 bond investment, at that time when we planned that, we did not know that the state would not fund public education in 23. We did not know they wouldn't do it again in 2025. We did not know the federal government would be doing what they're doing. And so all these pressures would have never kept me from making that same decision. I want to put new schools in East Austin. That's what we did in 2022 bond program. So now, as we move forward, I wanted to slow down the project and have those dollars move with the students as best as I can. The worst thing that could happen is we continue on, have to close the school, and then all of a sudden, that investment is now not supporting students. So if you're telling me, if the community is saying, Matias, I want you to look at Blackshear going to Oak Springs, we can explore that, but I want you to know why we did it the other way was precisely because what I've heard in the community for a long time is Blackshear is a historic elementary school, which that means is that Blackshear would close and go to Oak Springs. Now, it might not fit, it may be tight, we may have to do some other things, but that is why we led in that direction, because I'm never wanting to disrupt history. So I just want you to know, but if you're telling me that, we can have that conversation and look at next, but again, this is important. I have not heard that yet. No one's ever said that. So, I'm sorry. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, buenas noches. Good evening. Thank you, Reverend, for the opportunity to have this open for all of us. Se lo voy a hacer en español en representación de toda mi comunidad hispana del norte de Austin. Hay mucha preocupación en... Oh. No, you can do it later. Okay. Don't say that too loud. No. Okay. Una de las razones principales y preocupantes de nuestra comunidad es la redistribución de mapas en toda en esta área más bien del norte de Austin. Entonces, como comunidad, muchos de nosotros no entendemos cómo vino la redistribución de mapas y cómo eso va a afectar a todas nuestras escuelas y nuestras familias en el norte de Austin.
One of our biggest concerns is the map redistribution, especially for us families in the north of Austin. So we do not understand how you came about with that redistribution of the maps for the schools, and we don't know how that's going to affect us and our families.
Le quiero dar las gracias por la oportunidad de tener este foro. Ya hacía falta, de verdad. Creo que estas son las oportunidades que todos necesitamos para poder tener esos diálogos y esa comunicación que siempre lo hemos dicho. La comunicación es clave para todo. Entonces, el estar aquí, estar escuchándonos y que estemos platicando, eso es bueno, eso es lo que necesitamos y necesitamos más foros como estos, no los foros de Zoom porque ahí no podemos interactuar, no podemos preguntarle, no podemos regañarlo, aquí sí.
Okay, and also want to really thank you for your presence here, for you being here. And I think this is more than overdue to have a forum like this when we can speak to you in person. And we are here so that we are able to talk to you. And we want to have this opportunity, and we thank you for this. We do not want to have the forums via Zoom because there we cannot speak to you. We cannot scold you there. We cannot reprimand you. So this is why we want you here in person, and we thank you for that.
Para nuestra comunidad hispana es muy importante que nos eduquen en el aspecto de por qué están haciendo las cosas, más que nada, cuál es la razón detrás de las cosas. Por ejemplo, detrás de la distribución de mapas ahorita de todas las escuelas que están pasando. Sin ir tan lejos, tengo una familia en Stonegate, en las Tylas de Stonegate. Tienen un estudiante que va a Adobe, dos estudiantes que van a Hart. Ahora con la redistribución de mapas, ese estudiante tiene que ir a Walnut Creek. Para poder ir a esa escuela le tiene que agarrar 2 autobuses la familia para poder llegar allá. Cuando van a Hart, es solamente un camión que tiene que agarrar la familia para poder llegar allá. Entonces, esto trae muchos problemas en cuestión de cómo organizarse uno como familia para poder llevar a los estudiantes a las escuelas.
Okay, I think also that for our Hispanic families, we really need to be educated on how all this happens, how all this comes about. For example, the map redistribution, we need to know how it came about, why it's happening, what's going to happen. I have a couple of families that are having to go through all this. One of the families live in the Stonegate community where they live in trailer homes, and they have students at Dobie and students at Hart. And now they're gonna have to move to go to Walnut Creek, and to go to Walnut Creek, they're gonna have to take 2 buses to go there, and then there's also they have to continue going to Dobie. So how is that going to be able to happen? And I want you to take all that into consideration.
Y usted sabe que siempre es bienvenido a todas nuestras escuelas a tener estas pláticas con nosotros. Nosotros realmente le invitamos a que venga, a que esté con nosotros presentes. Marcela ayer le hizo una invitación para que escuche a los estudiantes de la escuela de Northeast. Creo que, y yo vengo nuevamente a recalcar lo mismo, es que usted escuche a los estudiantes, así como usted fue a Adobe, como fue a las otras escuelas afectadas. Usted pudo percibir lo que sus estudiantes querían de usted. Usted pudo conectar con ellos, pudo hablar con ellos. Eso es lo que queremos, que conecte con los estudiantes, que sepa de ellos, porque a fin de cuentas ellos van a ser los más afectados. Y como familias, entonces platicar realmente, porque usted ha dicho una cosa muy clave. Usted ha dicho que quiere que todos pasemos más tiempo trabajando juntos en comunidad. Y eso es lo que queremos.
And ultimately, I want to thank you for your presence, for being here. And we have invited you to come, and we want to invite you to continue coming with us. Marcela from Northeast has made you an invitation for you to come to our school, for you to get to meet the students, for you to receive the students' vibe and feel what they feel and be connected with them. And that's exactly what we want to do. we want for you to know what it is to be with us, and we want you to be more involved with us.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Hi. Well, I just wanted to say fortunate are those that are able to transfer their students wherever they want. I come from a community where parents aren't able to provide that form of transportation. I'm from Sanchez. I'm a parent there, and then I'm also an educator there. And one of the concerns we have is how do we avoid Sanchez becoming a gentrified school through the years to come? I know we wanted to keep transportation for our students so that they could stay there and continue the transfer for them so that they're allowed to stay there and the program can function effectively. But after years to come, we're gonna slowly start to lose those emergent bilingual students, and our fear is that eventually it won't be serving those students anymore since they're zoned to another school. And then the second question was, if our students were to stay there, would they be able to get free and reduced lunch if the other communities don't need free and reduced lunch? Like, would we still be a Title I school and those students benefit from those services?
Yeah, great questions. The first is that in the next version of the draft plan, you're going to see us make commitments around transportation for those 4 schools, Pickle, Wooten, Sanchez, and Odom. We're going to use the existing attendance boundaries, but we can make adjustments to ensure that we provide access to those families we want to make sure feel welcomed at Sanchez. So that's one way. The second way that you do it is you actually have to have familiar faces. So I know you're an educator. I know that you work at Sanchez. For me, it's really, really important that this is not, someone else coming. This is your home, right? So we have to figure out how to blend and balance so that when students come in the neighborhood, they see familiar faces that love them, care for them, and they're still there. So that's why the transition has to be hyper thoughtful. That's my expectation of the teams. We are going to make sure that that's part of it. Regarding what happens long term, that is really where making it an unzoned allows us to kind of protect the transfers and create the balance of enrollment that ensures that the neighborhood is supported and protected in that space. Regarding students that are receiving lunch, so the way that's tied to students identified as economically disadvantaged, based on the student population that we would expect to see in the new configuration, you would easily meet that. For Austin ISD, the federal level is 30%, 30%. We tend to go a little bit higher. You would be well over that. So that shouldn't be a concern for the community. We have those numbers. So you would still expect to see that for the entire school as you move forward. But I understand that question, and we should be able to reinforce that in the plan as we move forward. And again, we're still taking updates and refinements and changes. So, we don't know what will happen until we get to the 21st. But I wanted you to at least know that we are already making those specific changes.
Thank you, and we invite you to come to our school as well.
Okay.
We expect to see you there soon.
I was there not so long ago. No, and I go to lots of schools, y'all. Like I'm out all the time. I know that I want to get out. I want to engage. I certainly love doing it. Yeah.
Hi, I'm actually going to read verbatim from my phone because performing in front of people makes me nervous. I would like to see more specifics about what the transitions and supports for our SPED kids look like. Special education, our children with disabilities that are in a special education program. My child receives a Montessori education, and the commute increasing from 10 minutes round trip to 40 minutes round trip is not possible for us. Busing, unfortunately, would not be the equalizer for us because we have to pick up after school for private therapies. And we have 2 children, one who is not in special ed and does not need therapies, but does need aftercare so that we can continue working. So then that becomes 3 trips a day that we're taking to Gavali, a school that we don't want to impose on anyway. I think that's important to understand, is we don't want to be imposing on another school who has already been displaced multiple times, now given this big, beautiful school, and then being asked to be displaced again because they're taking on a completely new pedagogy. If Montessori does in fact relocate to Gavali, we will have to choose a different school. We will likely have to choose a different school specifically because of the distance and the time commuting. So this would not only be a transition to a new school, but it would also be a transition into a completely new pedagogy, and that disproportionately affects our school. All of our children that have been in Montessori for the average child in our school has been in this program for more than 2 or 3 years. So it's taken a long transition to get to the point that we are now, and our kids are really excelling. They just need a little more time to get to where we need to be. I understand the TEA restrictions are oppressing us and causing this. I totally get that. However, if there was a possibility of us being able to stay in Northeast, that's where we want to be. Over 84% of our children who are enrolled there, who are zoned there, and even transferring in, 84% of our student body live within a 5-minute drive of our school. So this is really disproportionately affecting our school. Not only because of the distance, but also because we'd be completely changing our education model from Montessori to a traditional method. So I'd like for you to please consider that. I do have one more thing to say, if you don't mind. I know that there are people behind me that would also like to speak. 2 quick things. 2 very quick things that I would like for you to consider. One being that you consider putting children who are in special education on a priority for enrollment, transfer enrollment. That would be a really small, for me, I feel like that would be a really small ask, is being able to be prioritized if we need to transfer somewhere to meet our children's needs. And that could be a huge difference for families that are already experiencing a lot of struggles to make sure that our kids' needs are met and able to access the education that is the right fit for them. The last thing that I'm going to say is I'm really scared about the Department of Education closing, and that I told myself I wasn't going to cry in front of y'all. The Department of Education closing eliminates a lot of supports, and I'm wondering if that, I know that's probably under radar, but I'm wondering what steps we're going to put in place to make sure that we're able to bolster those kids.
Great question. Thank you. You did great. You really did. Couple things. Students receiving special education services through the transition process. The first thing I want to be really clear about is you're going to see that reinforced. You know, we are never going to create a plan that does not include community and staff input. We're in this weird period right now where, you know, I can tell you the framework, I can tell you the way the ARDs are going to close, I can tell you all the things we're going to do, but ultimately speaking, what you want to see for your specific student is how Austin ISD is going to support him or her, or, you know, through this process. That's what you want to see. So Dr. Cherry Lee, who is Assistant Superintendent of Special Education, myself, direction from the board, you'll see an updated document on October 30th that will kind of lay out the larger steps. The one thing I want to also be really clear about is the resources that we deploy are based on student need, not on staffing allocations. So Brandy Hosick, who's our Chief of Talent Strategy, does hiring for, you know, staff, custodians, food service workers, but then every student, every educator that is certified to teach or to support students who receive special education services, or SLPs or diagnosticians or any of these specialties, they actually are hired through special education, because we place those resources and those staff based on need and where our students are. So you will see a lot of that kind of get built out. We're in this kind of weird spot right now where I want to tell you that we have the precise plan for your student. I can't tell you that until we know what's going to happen. We've built out the framework. We have the resources in place, but we expect to do that very, very quickly once the vote takes place. This gets back to why I don't want to delay a vote till spring, because if I lose time in the spring, you can bet that we will not be prepared, or as well as we won't be prepared as well as we could have been if that time just kind of gets away from us. Regarding priority transfers, I have heard that, you know, for students receiving special education services, typically if the ARD kind of, makes a determination that this school cannot support the student, but this other school can, that is an automatic transfer, for sure. We haven't necessarily contemplated, though I appreciate you sharing this with me, what it would kind of mean as a priority kind of lottery if you are a student that just receives special education services. Not determined by the ARD, but or an IEP, but determined because, am I saying too much? Okay, that's General Counsel Kenneth Walker. When he starts walking up, I get scared. He must mean, he must mean that I'm about to go down a rabbit hole. So you see how I started walking up? Because I'm kind of, so I will pause there, but I'm telling you that we, Trustee Del Rioste, many others have really kind of advocated that we show more detail on how we're going to do it. And so you will see that in this next version of the plan. And all the feedback you provided about when, we are exploring that. And so you should see that discussed tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Chief Drinks and Superintendent Matias, Dr. Sterling Lands. This is the meeting that I could make, and I have a little bit to say. I am an Austinite. I am a product of AISD, K through 12. I went to 5 schools during my time because of boundaries. I was bused from north to east. I graduated from Reagan High School. I have currently 4 children in AISD. One is a senior, one is in 8th grade, one is in 1st grade, and one is in pre-K 3. I am also an employee of AISD. So I have a huge, huge investment here. And what I have to say is, I implore you to go back to the drawing board. Please take a hard look at each campus and all the specifics regarding that campus. Slow the process down. First, take one step at a time. Instead of doing all of this at once, do the boundaries another time. It's been postponed 2 to 3 years already. Why not one more? Change the dual language in 2 years. Don't change it right now. The reason being is because we have to get this right the first time. We had a big problem with enrollment when the school year started this year. Our enrollment online was not working. So you're trying to move 13 campuses, you're trying to move dual language, you're trying to move boundaries, and you want to do all that with a possible system error. We have to make sure that everything is in place, and we have to make sure that everything is done with all the facts put out there. Okay, for example, these are just examples. When they have had little to no support for 3 years. The principal has asked numerous of times. She has a file of things that she has sent to the district asking for help. What makes you think that moving Wynn to another campus is going to change the problem? It's not. You're just moving the problem. So why not, with them, do the turnaround plan? That way, we can fix what the problem is. Not to mention Maplewood. Why are we closing Maplewood? Maplewood's an A school. Why would we move them to Campbell? I live on Statford that turns into Cedar. I live on that street. My child doesn't even go to that school. The street, the neighborhood cannot support more students there. It cannot. Not to mention, the city has a big project coming that may disrupt the learning days, meaning water could get cut off, electricity could get cut off. These are the things, specifics that I'm urging you to look at when you're trying to move these schools. Everything, go to the city, say, is this a good thing to do? What is going on around this school? Is it gonna be good to move a whole school over to this other school? No. Okay, the other thing is, fix the problems first. Now, I have some ideas for you. First, sell property. How many campuses do we have that we could sell that could alleviate your problem for years to come? Many properties. Do you need me to name them? No. Okay.
I can tell you that if I were to do that, we'd have another conversation that would be the opposite direction about why are you, so just, I have to navigate all of this together.
But we don't need the schools. We're losing kids by the droves. And do you think that these 13 schools closing, we're not gonna lose kids?
So, continue on, I'm sorry.
Okay. The other way you can make revenue, there's 300 kids on a wait list for WIN. Open those 300 spots up and that will become a complete school. You could make money that way. The other thing you could do, add 4 pre-K centers, pre-K 3, pre-K 4. Add one north, south, east, and west. Pre-K, when I was trying to get my son in, every campus that I went to only had 18 spots for pre-K 3. 18 spots. So that just tells you that there's a need there. The other thing is, possibly the district could go to the state or whoever we need to go to. We could be in support of you and say, end recapture. If we're so much in a deficit, end the recapture. Why are we giving money away when we can't even run our own district? Okay, the other thing is consolidate Northeast and LBJ. There's some people in the community that don't want this, but there's a big part of the LBJ and Northeast community that want them to be merged. Look at that. I know y'all don't, but there are a lot of people that do. So, and then the other thing is seek private donors for more revenue.
So I'll make a couple responses. Delaying is what caused us to get in the situation. If we delay action like 1 year, 2 years, the amount of risk that'll be introduced into the system will be impossible for me to navigate and really anyone else to navigate. So please let me finish, please. Like I give you time. So the second thing I would say is when it comes to the conversations, the questions that you made around student movement or selling property, the decisions that are in this plan, the recommendations, actually in some cases create unique solutions that wouldn't otherwise exist. What I mean is, if I wait to move the 4 wall-to-wall language programs, then that means now I don't actually end up closing the number of schools, or if I do, I'm closing more schools in East Austin because I still have a budget deficit. Sanchez has 3 Fs. That's a state thing. I have to deal with that. If I don't deal with it, or if I do a turnaround, or a restart, or a reassignment, or an 1882, which I know no one really appreciates and wants to do, then I could end up in a situation where that ends up being a vacant building. I do not want that anywhere in East Austin. I don't want it. So
we have it in East Austin, though.
No. So when you think about Wynn Montessori, I just explained to the young woman over here about why we made that decision. It was because we have too many seats in that area. If I address the efficiency issue alone, then I would have to close 1 more school. I am doing this to not close schools in East Austin. That is the only way that you get the distribution of closures that we have now. And so if I do any one of these in isolation, I promise you we will make the hard decision, and the next year we'll go through all this pain again, be right back here. And what's happening when all of us are here and our staff are here and executive directors and principals are stressing about all the stuff happening, we're not focusing on the kids. This cannot continue. It's too much. It's just too much. Since I got here, TA agreed order, special education. Before that, the 2017 bond program, 2022 bond program, the tax rate election. Now I'm dealing with accountability. It has to end. We have to stabilize. It's too much for our community. So I agree that there are some things that we can look at in the future, but if you delay, I promise you, you will ultimately regret 2 years from now, because we could be in a situation, not like Fort Worth, where you wishing you would have made a decision today. I am not going to, I'm sorry?
Why can't you sell the property? You didn't address that.
So sell properties. Okay, so we have looked at monetizing property. I have already pursued, we've monetized parts of Nita Coy. We have housing, teacher housing, and affordable housing going on there. For Rosedale, where the site moved, we have transacted that. We are in the process of the developer. The board has already approved it. We're going through the entitlement process. I'm doing it already. When it comes to other schools, Brooke is the other one that comes up from time to time. We use as an expansion hub to actually support special education because it had to catch up on the evaluations. And so we created a support space there. Now, I will tell you that if I were to bring that back, or we are going to transact it, we are moving forward with it, but there's lots of community interest in seeing what happens. So it doesn't happen that fast. I can't go find hundreds of millions of dollars. It is 10 million, 5 million, 20 million, and those are drops in the bucket, and they're one-time offsets. Once that money is burned up, then I'm going to be back here next year with the same deficit because it's $1 billion budget. That's how big it is. It will get burned up like that. So we cannot focus on one-time investments or offsets. You have to talk about reducing our costs. You made a comment around recapture, and there's the person before you talked about supporting our students that receive special education services and not rely on the federal government. Like, the more that we rely on these alternative revenue streams, the more risk we introduce into our system. I experienced that when I had 100 people who are tied to Title II, Title III, Title IV, and I had to tell them that you will not have a job in a week because the federal government decided to freeze funds. Like, that is what we're trying to get away from. Delaying does not help anybody. Like, we're just going to avoid it, and then what happens? Perhaps the trustees aren't in place. Maybe the superintendent is in place, and then all of a sudden, a year passes, 2 years pass, 3 years pass, and you're right here, but it's worse. Like, I'm not going to put this school district in that type of risk. I won't. And I may not be the perfect plan, but you cannot delay or kick the can down the road. You just can't. Superintendents have done that before me. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. So I just wanted to share that with you. I mean,
I don't know that I want to ask anything else. Pero buenas noches a todos y gracias por acompañarnos. Superintendent, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your commitment here. This is heavy work, and I'm not here to give you any answers. I think what I am going to ask you is to come walk the neighborhoods. I think many times what we've done, and I appreciate the gentleman talking to us about data. I think we can do whatever we want with data, but what we can't do is that we need to understand that behind every child, there's a number. Behind every number is a face. Behind every face, it's a family. And behind every family, it's the sustainability of the backbone of our community. I understand that you or somebody before you had to kick the can down the road. Or maybe we kicked the can, but I don't think we're afraid of making difficult decisions. My concern is making the wrong decision. And what we've created is a system where we look at numbers and we lose the face of the kid. And we're gutting communities because we've gentrified the soul of a community. Don't even touch the numbers. Don't even touch the numbers. It's the soul that we've lost. I'm married to a woman that was raised in East Austin. My grandkids are 5th generation Austinites. Y te hablan el inglés y el español como cualquier persona. They dominate both English and Spanish because they were educated in this district. So I'm not here to talk and bash anybody. But what I am here to do is to tell you that, yes, you got to make decisions, but don't make decisions without including people. Because, yeah, we'll kick the can, but we haven't even had a conversation. And if we have, sometimes they don't trust us. Right? Because my wife says, and my kids are 5th generation Austinites. She says, babe, they did this to me when I was a baby. And so what do? I'm not going to give you any answers, okay? Though let me tell you, I can navigate. I got a PhD in this stuff. I'm not going to give you an answers. What I will tell you is I'm committed to showing up whenever you have a meeting and help you figure this out together. Because it's not about making the right or wrong decisions. It's about making the decision that's going to help us move together. We've been waiting and redesign plans. You just said it. I don't even listen to them anymore because they haven't been implemented. Right? Am I right?
Yeah, for years.
Yeah, right. And so why don't we stop?
I didn't say I didn't listen to them. I said that we have not implemented those plans.
That's what I heard.
But I didn't say
You're splitting hairs. You're splitting hairs, right? So no, let's call it what it is. And so for me, it's like I'm not going to tell you you're right or wrong. Okay? What I am telling you is I'm committed.
Appreciate it.
And what I will tell you also is that we can make the decision, and not necessarily stop. And I'm going to invite you to think about this. We don't have to stall everything and do what we need to do, but we can parallel these conversations and go and visit with people every week. The people with the right answer are those closest to the issues. And I don't think we're doing that. And let me tell you, I respect your board. There's some really smart people there. But sometimes we don't listen, and sometimes we're not tuned, and many times we follow the pill of efficiency and we totally compromise quality. Let's get to the soul of this. This community cannot afford to lose its soul because we're following the dollars and I hear you. You know, I'm going to add another one on top of what Reverend Lance said. Not only are you those two pillars that he said, but you also have a community that is high in need. And we're sending money back, right? The state doesn't have the answer for us. This is your only saving grace right here. And with this community. And when you stop listening to this, and I'm not telling you when you stop showing up, because you keep showing up, right? Your mama taught you to do this, and you're going to continue to do this. Now listen. Listen. Again, I don't have an answer for you, but I'm committed. I'm committed to figuring it out with you. And I hear people here saying that they'll show up. Thank you for showing up, and let's keep talking.
I thought we were down to the last one. Yeah, well, come on. Yeah.
In the spirit of not kicking the can down the road, I have a specific question about the single gender middle schools here in the Northeast. And this is a Northeast community, so I need to speak to that. I would like you to speak to that specifically. The gentleman who talked about his daughter attending Marshall, but his younger daughter having to go to Webb, and that split, the Windsor Park split you mentioned, and then the boundary of 35, is the result of you saying the district doesn't have space at Marshall for all of those students. However, the plan that you put out doesn't mention at all the single gender middle schools. And so I'm just curious what the vision is for that, because I don't want to kick that can down the road. What is the plan for the single gender middle schools and how they fit into the Windsor Park split and alignment and feeder patterns?
Yeah, single gender, Gus Garcia and Bertha Sadler-Means. So you're right, Quilawak. This is an area that isn't reflected, isn't necessarily like addressed in a specific way in the plan. And I would say the reason for that being is kind of how the plan started and evolved. And it was about, trying to do lots of things, but also acknowledging that there are some things that historically have just they've kind of not been protected, but we've noticed that they're moving, there's work. The single gender schools, honestly, kind of are viewed in some cases as those things that are, they've butted up. Gus Garcia has done very well. Bertha Sadler-Means, they have a new building, they're getting built out. So this plan is not included. I've been asked by trustees in some cases, hey, like, what are single gender schools how are they gonna be supported or not be supported? That is a big, big question, philosophically, as this organization, because they're not the only single gender schools that we have. We also have Ann Richards. And so you can't have that conversation without having another conversation. So it's not in here because I think it's a bigger conversation. It's one that's going to be tied to the academic vision, academic planning. What do we believe when it comes to single gender schools? How do we support them or not support them? So that's why they're not in here. I don't have like a good answer, like I haven't something hidden or anything. It's really a function of what I understood to be true before we started, the progression that they have made, and the fact that it's a bigger conversation. The same thing is also true of magnets, right? So magnet programs. I would say that's another thing that is huge that we have to talk about, but to put that into this, it would be, I would think, quite the lift and probably not possible in the time that we have. So that's kind of, and Nadia.
Hi, so I'm gonna make a few summary statements, then I'm gonna bring it back to single gender. we need to see a simple list of classes by Friday, ideally. That is part of this plan that moves forward, that tells us what actual classes in core subjects will be available at every secondary school. That seems like such a simple question. I'm not an educator, but like, you know, math, English, science, like there are some basic things that like a small private school would offer if they don't have any electives. Like what are the core things that are advanced academics that everyone will be able to just say, oh good, they're gonna have that math sequence that's needed to get my kid to college. I don't know why we haven't seen that basic simple list. I think that's super important. I understand closing the wall-to-wall campuses, but I don't understand why we wouldn't reintroduce two-way DL in the communities that we're looking to expand the schools, the 4 that you mentioned. We can bring in those same students to those schools by expanding two-way DL at those schools in a much less traumatic way. Blanton Elementary is bursting at the seams, and it has two-way DL. All of the students are no longer in segregated one-way settings. Like this is something we've been pushing for. It then allows all the students who are already there, who don't know how to jump through transportation and application hurdles to get there, to stay there. So I still don't see the reasoning behind that, because we can provide the staffing, we're saying, we can have, we're literally putting it there and then we're displacing the families and the communities instead of just building those up to be the new two-way.
So move away from the
campuses.
wall-to-wall
Yes.
structure,
Yes.
just philosophically.
Yeah, and even
Yeah.
our wall-to-walls before were not unzoned. Like they were zoned, right?
Yeah.
So we
No,
can
and
find a
we've gotten
hybrid.
feedback about that too.
Yeah.
I appreciate
The
that.
staffing allotment that is in the plan, which I just saw today, is for TAP and consolidation schools, and it talks about some enhanced staffing. That is enhanced staffing that I expect to be the general staffing moving forward for all Title I schools. I don't want to see this general boost of staffing go away when a school is no longer in an triple F crisis. So that also seems missing from the plan. Like, what is the general increased staffing? I think there was a reduced student to teacher ratio of 1:20. I would really like to see that lower, maybe 1:18, just to start out for schools that are experiencing unacceptable ratings in Title I schools in general. Communication, across our schools, nobody knows this is happening. So, we did a survey of kids at Harrison at Wynn in 5th grade. Where are you planning to send your kid? No, and Webb was the first one, on top. That's where the current plan shows people are zoned to, and where we were historically zoned out of the area when the single genders were closed. Nobody selected Webb among these families. And I think maybe 20 kids at Harris filled it out, maybe 10 kids at Wynn. Nobody selected Webb. 2/3 of kids selected Marshall, and then a spattering of other schools. So families in general don't even know that this has been proposed, and historically it takes one-to-one communication to get this kind of information out. So I feel like I don't see the plan, but you said you want to give families an opportunity to plan. They won't have the opportunity to plan if we don't somehow reach out and make sure everybody knows exactly what their assignment is and what it has changed to. And then back to the area, the idea, obviously I am excited about aligning feeder patterns. However, it feels like the alignment is in many places across the district happening without alignment to neighborhoods. And I think that needs to be looked at more closely. In our area, Webb does not look like it's set up for success. And it has both Hart and Brown split to 2 different middle schools, and then Webb has kids from Windsor Park that should be going to Marshall or Bertha Sadler coming into that neighborhood, and then it splits again at the high school level to McCallum, and that is not like, yay, we're excited for Webb. Like, that is not going to be an excellent setup. And Windsor Park, University Hills, Colony Park, Pecan Springs, this whole area is historically Bertha Sadler means in Gus Garcia. And when we hear that there's not space for us at Marshall after all our kids going there for the last 3 years, that is a false narrative. It's not space for us at Marshall. There are 1,500 empty seats at Bertha Sadler Means and Gus Garcia. And there was fear that when Marshall opened, the enrollment at Bertha Sadler and Gus Garcia would go down. And I checked, it was solid at 500 together before Marshall opened, and it is still around 500. So they are doing a great job of marketing. They have an awesome thing going on. It is not something that appeals to the majority of people. And I think it is unfortunate that the district is dancing around the conversation instead of just starting the conversation. So as a community, we can have decided by now what the plan was, because the whole point is to get our kids into our schools that we can walk to. We're walking by the schools all day, and we want to get in them. So that's that.
I appreciate that.
What I did, I whispered in his ear and says, in 5 minutes, I'm going to shut off all the power. So I'm glad you could hear that. First, let me say thank you so much for coming out tonight. We intentionally did not try to run this like a board meeting where you had to come up and then there's a bell, 3 minutes and you're down. None of that foolishness. We wanted people to talk, and you did do that. So that we're glad about. Now look, and there are many, many people who look at what happens on the TV when you see the board's meeting, and they believe that that is the way to run a meeting. That is really not the way to run a meeting, but that is the accepted format in this area. This is not the only area. So what you did tonight, I've been here now through 4 decades. I've seen superintendents come and go, board members come and go. I've never seen a superintendent stand up and do what you did. I mean, not like ever. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Not ever. Yeah. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think we need to be able to encourage where we can encourage. You understand? Encourage where you can encourage, because we got a whole bunch we can raise hell about. But we ought to be able to encourage sometimes, at least something. You can't be mad about everything all the time, So here's the point. Trust is not granted by position. You don't get trust by position. I listened to Brother Melvin a few minutes ago, and I remember I've heard him many times in the past, and he's data-driven. So I like people that way because they understand ones and zeros. Well, it just so happens that we're at a stage in Austin where we have to stop acting like we don't understand the elephant in the room. I don't have to name it. You know the elephant in the room. Now, when are we going to deal with that? We don't have to answer that tonight. So thank you so much, the superintendent, for coming out, bringing your staff, for all of you, and thank you to the community. Do you want to do this again soon as we can? All right. So give you a break. You're going to answer. Someone's going to send us answers to the questions, right? And then we'll come back and reconvene again. Cheryl, do you want to have a word? Come on.
Just real quick, thank you so much, all 3 of you, for coming. I really appreciate it. Matias had a meeting with former school board members, and I asked, well, actually, I told him this community don't know him because they don't see him. He said, I'm always in the community. I said, well, okay, then come to a meeting. And so I actually sent the meeting notice. I actually sent him a text to ask for the meeting, and sure enough, he said we could have this meeting. And the reason I wanted this meeting is because sometimes you have to be in front of people to hear what they are saying, and sometimes it just cannot be virtual. I believe this man has a good heart. I believe he wants to do the right thing. But sometimes the right thing may not be the most popular, but then also you may not know exactly what that right thing is for the community, but the community know what is right for them. So you have to be very careful as you go forward. And as I told Ali here, that a mistake that you can make is not involving the people who are going to be impacted the most by your decision. And you all have not done that. So you have to be very careful as you go forward. Because when you look at Oak Springs, Oak Springs is impacted by Booker T, but also Elm Ridge, which is off of 12th Street. So you have to be careful how you do things. I know Blackshear is historical, and I don't want to see it closed. But if we can figure out what to do with other schools, we can figure out what to do with that. And as we look at when Montessori, that community fought for that Montessori program. Why take it out of the community? Leave it there. They fought for it. When you look at Maplewood and Campbell, well, we can close Maplewood and move it to Campbell, but let's not disperse the kids that are there to other schools, because that's their community. Okay, so let's see how we work together on that. Okay, but again, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and we look forward to doing this again.
When past promises have been broken, words alone are no longer enough. So we need visible, measurable proof of integrity. And that's how we close this evening. We need measurable proof of integrity before we can believe in the process. I believe that we're on our way to something grand. Good night. It was good. It's just good. I mean, how many times do you think this happens in the past where you get this? Look at the mix. Why do you say that? Yeah. Hello. Hello. I'm so glad you were here. Well, come by. 10 o'clock. Look, I'm telling you, love it. And look, we never have it. If you walk in, we try never to let you get out, okay? Yeah, because we love on our people. I really mean that.